What if the most coveted prize in the Donetsk region turned into a fiery grave for the Kremlin's biggest weapons cache, its highways choked with smoke, and Russian generals were forced to stare at a shattered map that offered no clear path forward? The city of Pokrovsk, once seen as a golden key, suddenly became a battlefield of ash and echoing artillery bursts. The air smelled of burnt fuel and metal, while distant drones whispered like angry insects. Russian troops, clad in worn camouflage, pressed forward under a sky that seemed to roar with disbelief. Their tanks rumbled over cracked roads, only to halt before a wall of fire lit by Ukrainian strikes. Every launch group, every swarm of drones, every artillery barrage was met with a cold, calculated Ukrainian defense. Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky announced on Telegram that August had yielded a net loss for the invaders. In the Dobrapilya sector the enemy seized 13.5 square kilometers yet surrendered 25.5 square kilometers, and in the Pokrovsk direction they gained merely 5 square kilometers while Ukrainian forces reclaimed 26 square kilometers. The question lingered, could the Russians still hope to break through, or would their momentum dissolve into the smoke? In the wake of that shocking reversal, the Ukrainian side shifted gears, launching laser-sharp strikes on ammunition depots hidden deep within occupied Donetsk. Imagine the deafening crack of a depot exploding, the ground trembling as 100-ton stores of shells turned to fire balloons, the acrid scent of cordite filling the night air. Footage from the front shows thick black clouds rising over Donetsk city, where long-range drones pierced the sky, slipping past air defenses that sputtered and failed. One blast was so powerful that a soldier, several miles away, collapsed to the ground, shaken by the shockwave. Similar fury erupted in Seladov, only 10 miles from Pokrovsk, where a local base ignited in a roar of flames, and a stunned Russian soldier muttered, "Hell has broken loose." These strikes emptied Russian supply lines, leaving frontline troops scrambling for ammunition. With their depots reduced to ash, Russian commanders must now split their remaining munitions into tiny, hidden caches and risk convoys being ambushed. Will Ukraine seize the moment to push deeper, or will the Kremlin find a new way to flood the front with weapons? The answer hangs in the smoldering ruins, waiting for the next thunderous strike. The previous segment showed how Ukrainian forces turned the tables in August, repelling wave after wave and clawing back more ground than they lost. They shouted victory from the front lines, while the enemy's maps shrank. What turned a hopeful breakthrough for the invaders into their smallest gain of the year? In Dobrapilya the Russians seized 13.5 square kilometers but forfeited 25.5 square kilometers. In Pokrovsk they added just 5 square kilometers while Ukrainians reclaimed 26 square kilometers. Now September arrives, and the battle does not pause. How will the defenders keep pressing forward when the enemy still launches hundreds of assaults each week? Building on August's fierce back and forth, Ukraine shifted from holding the line to striking deep into the heart of the Russian supply chain. Precision drones peppered ammunition depots across the front line and farther into occupied Donetsk. The smell of scorching metal rose as explosions cracked the night sky, rattling windows and shaking dust from the ground. Footage captured thick black plumes spiraling above Donetsk city, while nearby air defenses sputtered feebly, failing to stop every incoming drone. A thunderous blast sent a soldier at the edge of the blast zone to the cold earth, his shout echoing, "Hell has broken loose." What will happen when the enemy's stockpiles, once thought impregnable, become tinder for relentless raids? After the thunderous raids, the Russian command faces a grim choice: scatter their munitions into hidden caches or watch their frontline troops run out of firepower. Convoys now snake through ruined roads, their engines humming like anxious wolves, while Ukrainian eyes track every movement from above. Each intercepted shipment strips another layer of strength from elite battalions, leaving gaps that could be exploited for a daring breakthrough. The air feels heavy with anticipation, the scent of burnt oil lingering over the battlefield. Will the dispersal strategy by the invaders time, or will it unravel under the next Ukrainian strike that promises to shatter the last remaining supply lines? In the wake of Ukraine's strategic counteroffensive, a fierce series of ammunition depots came under attack in the heart of the occupied Donetsk region. The most notorious strikes erupted in Donetsk city itself, where Ukraine deployed long-range drones. As they pierced through the sky, fervent explosions resounded, shaking the very foundations of Russian supply lines. Footage captured by Russian soldiers at the scene unveiled smoke trails, indicating the desperate activation of Kremlin air defenses. Yet amidst the rising chaos, ominous black smoke billowed from targets, highlighting the failure of these defenses. One eruption was so ferocious that it sent soldiers sprawling to the ground, even from miles away. As hours ticked by, secondary blasts echoed ominously, signaling that massive stores of ammunition had ignited, leaving destruction in their wake. The extent of chaos was unfathomable. The plume of smoke suggested not just one, but multiple crucial supply bases had been decimated. This showcased Ukraine's razor-sharp intelligence, dynamically targeting the vital gears of the Russian war machine at precisely the right moments to maximize damage. Meanwhile, further south in Seladov, a significant logistics center, another barrage unfolded, transforming a local military base into a raging inferno. The video footage revealed devastation as flames consumed the structure, with haunting sounds of secondary detonations piercing through the air. A visibly rattled Russian soldier captured the chaos, whispering that hell has broken loose, beautifully summarizing the grim reality. The Russian forces had believed they could solidify their hold on Seladov, given its proximity to the front lines. Railroads and highways leading in and out rendered it a strategic asset. However, relentless targeting by Ukrainian forces was exhausting Russian resources. With targets being meticulously chosen at a moment's notice, Ukraine's assaults forced Russia to scramble. Their bravado in the region now faced a grim reality. But what lies ahead? As Russia's ammunition supplies dwindle, will they adapt fast enough to repel Ukraine's advances? The stakes couldn't be higher. Will the remnants of Russian strength hold firm or crumble under the relentless pressure? The front lines are poised for a pivotal transformation, and each day brings fresh uncertainties for both sides. In a tense standoff deep in Donetsk, the dust had barely settled when chaos erupted. With roaring flames and thunderous detonations, it became unmistakable that the Ukrainian forces struck with relentless precision. A drone captured the vivid scene, thick black smoke billowing, swirling high above what used to be a bustling ammunition depot. The murmur of a shaken Russian soldier echoed in the aftermath, exclaiming that hell has broken loose. Such words, laced with disbelief, perfectly encapsulated the mayhem unfolding in Seladov. Seladov, strategically located near the insatiable front lines, was a logistical gem for Russian troops. Since its capture, Russian forces had transformed it into a fortress of arms and supplies, convinced that they could extend their reach into Ukrainian territory. However, their creeping advance was met with resistance. The Ukrainians, ever vigilant, had other plans. They unleashed a barrage of strikes, utilizing drones and artillery, turning the city into a target rather than a stronghold. Crucially, the Russians had believed their recent colonization of Seladov would offer them added security. They meticulously selected a site for their operations, surrounded by towering buildings, which they hoped would shield them from Ukrainian fire. However, Ukraine's strategic hit was swift and devastating, turning their ambition into a smoldering ruin. The wreckage laid waste to what was supposed to be a secure supply route and forced the Russians to reconsider their position. These attacks did not happen in isolation. Over recent weeks, Ukraine had orchestrated numerous strikes against Russian ammunition depots, strategically dismantling their adversaries' capabilities. Back in July, a successful assault on another depot in Kharkiv sent shockwaves through social media. Explosive footage revealed heart-stopping destruction, as effulgent bursts of flame erupted, obliterating the Russian supply lines further into enemy territory. Each successful hit chipped away at Russian military sturdiness, and the stakes were growing higher for Moscow. As their ammunition dwindled, the effectiveness of their operations suffered immensely. The fallout of losing critical supplies had a domino effect, compelling the Russian commanders to scatter their remaining munitions into smaller caches. They could no longer rely on mass stockpiling without placing themselves at risk of Ukrainian drone strikes. Still, every action evokes a reaction. The unfolding scenario presents Ukrainian forces with an opportunity to exploit the Russians' mismanagement. The dispersal of supplies, while a tactical shift, only increases their vulnerability. If Ukraine can intercept these convoys, they can further erode the already frail Russian front lines, making retrieval a perilous endeavor. And so, as the military clock ticks on, both sides find themselves entangled in a web of ever-changing strategies, each vying for an upper hand in this unyielding clash of wills. The question lingers in the air: can Ukraine continue its relentless campaign, or will Russia adapt and strike back with newfound fervor? The next move could determine the course of this fierce struggle, drawing all eyes to the unfolding drama in Donetsk. A city's sky suddenly alights, fire blooming like angry lilies, the air thick with the acrid sting of burning metal. What does a commander feel when his own artillery stockpiles erupt in a thunderous roar and the ground quakes beneath him? In a flashback, a young soldier recalls the night's echo, shrapnel clattering, smoke spiraling, the distant howl of drones. Ukrainian unmanned flyers pierced the Donetsk skyline, zeroed in on ammunition warehouses, and detonated them. Explosions rattled the street, black plumes rose, and a lone rifleman fell, stunned by the shockwave. The strike left the Russian line hollow, and the next target loomed on the horizon. The previous raid shattered the forward supply hub, forcing Russian commanders to rethink their whole logistics web. Can an army survive when its lifeblood vaporizes in seconds? Reports show that in August the occupiers seized 13.5 square kilometers in Dobrpilya, yet lost 25.5 square kilometers. In Pokrovsk they gained 5 square kilometers while Ukrainian forces reclaimed 26 square kilometers, an overall swing of over 21 square kilometers. Ukraine answered with precise, coordinated drone assaults on depots deep inside occupied Donetsk, striking the rail triangle of Donetsk-Yasinovato-Korlivka and the Avdiivko-Karatine corridor. The blasts rattled concrete, smelled of scorched powder, and lit the night. Now the Russian high command faces a stark choice: keep massive stockpiles in vulnerable sites or scatter their munitions into smaller, hidden caches. Their decision will shape the next move. With giant stores blown to ash, Russian officers ordered the remaining ammunition split into dozens of tiny hideouts, each convoy now a moving target. Will the fractured supply lines become the undoing of the offensive? The convoy engines churned, the cold metal of trucks humming over cracked roads, while distant drones whispered overhead. Every rumble could herald a strike, every plume of dust a potential ambush. Ukrainian forces, armed with fresh intel, ready to intercept these lifelines, watch the roads like a hawk eyeing its prey. If the convoys are cut, the frontline squads will run dry, their firepower fading into silence. The battlefield holds its breath, awaiting the next flash of fire that could decide the fate of Pokrovsk. Previously we saw the fierce clash over Pokrovsk, a city perched on a key highway to Dnipro. What if an entire army ran out of ammunition overnight? The Russian push ground to a sudden halt after Ukraine struck deep inside occupied Donetsk. Drones swooped over ammo depots, igniting thunderous blasts that rattled the sky. Smoke curled like black serpents, the scent of cordite stinging the air. In August the Russians seized 13.5 square kilometers near Dobrpilya but lost 25.5 square kilometers. In the Pokrovsk sector they gained 5 square kilometers while Ukraine recaptured 26 square kilometers. Now the Kremlin's arsenal smolders, its commanders left with trembling questions. Will their next assault be a desperate gamble? The last report showed Ukraine turning the tables, targeting the lifelines that fed the Russian front. Can a single precision strike cripple an entire supply chain? Ukraine's MQ-9 Reaper drones pierced the defenses of Donetsk city, homing on 2 massive ammunition warehouses. Explosions rippled, shaking nearby walls, a shockwave knocked a soldier to the ground miles away. Secondary blasts followed, lighting the night with firestorms that devoured hundreds of tons of shells. Further south, in Seladov, a base ablaze erupted in a chorus of whistles and rattling metal. The town, once Russia's main ammo hub south of Pokrovsk, now smokes like a furnace, its corridors empty. With roads riddled by artillery and drones, any convoy must crawl over broken pavement, exposed to relentless fire. The Russians can no longer stockpile in one place, they must scatter their munitions into hidden caches. Will those hidden caches survive the next Ukrainian sweep? Now the battlefield has shifted from brute force to a game of hide-and-seek. How long can an army fight when its rifles are empty and its commanders hear only the echo of their own artillery? Soldiers, deprived of shells, are forced to ration every shot, to choose battles with surgical care. The usual Russian roar of overwhelming assaults has softened to cautious whispers. This new restraint gives Ukraine breathing room to plan counterstrikes, to send more drones behind enemy lines, to map radar gaps and air defense cracks. If the frontline troops cannot sustain fire, they will retreat, abandoning posts and letting Ukraine reclaim towns once thought lost. Each reclaimed village pushes the Russian line farther from Pokrovsk, rebuilding a buffer that makes the city even harder to seize. The next convoy approaches the shattered rail triangle of Donetsk and Novokorlivka. Will it slip through unnoticed, or will a silent drone mark its doom? The answer hangs in the smoky horizon. Previously, we saw how Ukrainian strikes against Russian air defenses and radar systems near Pokrovsk have created unexpected openings. These holes allow Ukrainian drones to slip deep behind enemy lines, gathering crucial intelligence, harassing supply convoys, and destroying Russian repair depots, command centers, and ammunition stores. The Russian forces now face a logistical nightmare as their vital resources vanish before their eyes. But what if the very foundation of Russia's military strength is crumbling faster than anyone expected? How does an army fight without ammo, without vehicles, without support? Analysts report that recent attacks in Donetsk alone have obliterated hundreds of tons of shells. Add to that the losses from other strikes, and Russia's stockpiles are hemorrhaging at an alarming pace. Russia has already endured a catastrophic toll, hundreds of thousands of soldiers killed or wounded, thousands of tanks destroyed, and vast quantities of weaponry, including anti-aircraft guns, radars, aircraft, and support vehicles, reduced to nothing. Their economy is faltering, choked by relentless attacks that stretch their industrial production to its limits. Despite Russia's enormous military budget and claims of massive factories churning out tanks and drones, replenishing the lost ammunition is becoming nearly impossible. Every explosive blow Ukraine lands weakens the Kremlin's grip on this conflict. Morale within the Russian ranks hits rock bottom as soldiers wonder why supplies stop arriving. It's no surprise some choose to desert, or even switch sides, fearing for their survival. The harsh truth is visible in the weakening front lines, units run low on ammo, stranded without support, collapsing under the pressure. But here's the twist few saw coming: these crippling effects are not just happening at the front. They echo through every layer of the Russian military machine. Supplies disrupted at the depots, convoys ambushed on the roads, command posts burned, each loss multiplies the chaos, spreading doubt and panic through commanders and troops alike. As the war grinds on into the harshest months, we must ask, how long can an empire fight when its lifeblood, munitions and supplies, is decimated day after day? Will the Russian commanders finally admit defeat, or will desperation push them toward even darker tactics? The next chapter unfolds where desperation meets opportunity. Under the shadow of destroyed ammo stockpiles, Ukrainian forces prepare their next move. Could the unraveling Russian supply lines soon tip the balance in this brutal war? Or will unseen reserves and grim resolve keep the fight burning another day? Stay tuned, because the battle for survival, for control of Pokrovsk and beyond, is far from over. What if the enemy's entire ammunition arsenal turned to ash overnight, igniting a chain reaction that left thousands of frontline soldiers scrambling for anything to fire? Imagine massive explosions painting the night sky with firestorms, the deafening roar of blast waves shaking the ground, and the choking smell of burnt metal mingling with fear. This is the shockwave that has halted Russia's Pokrovsk push and left the Kremlin scrambling for answers. Brief recap: earlier, Russian troops faced a desperate choice: abandon their positions, wave a white flag, or even defect, because every day without ammunition weakens a front line. Spring and summer saw supply lines severed, leaving soldiers without food, water, or shells, and their units crumbled. That same collapse now repeats in Dobrpilya and nearby areas, where Russian forces sit idle, hoping for a miracle while Ukraine's tactical edge grows ever sharper. Ukraine's strategy is startlingly simple: locate the Kremlin's most valuable supply hubs and blow them up, turning the odds in its favor. In August, Commander Alexander Syrsky reported that while Russian troops captured 13.5 square kilometers in Dobrpilya, they lost 25.5 square kilometers, and in the Pokrovsk sector they gained a meager 5 square kilometers but surrendered 26 square kilometers of ground. The tide is turning, and every new strike tightens the noose. Recent precision raids have detonated ammunition depots deep inside occupied Donetsk. In the city of Donetsk, long-range drones pierced air defenses, depositing explosives that sparked thunderous detonations. Smoke billowed, black clouds rose, and shockwaves rattled soldiers miles away, forcing one to collapse to the ground. Secondary blasts lit the night for hours, confirming that hundreds of tons of munitions had ignited. Further south, the town of Seladov, just 10 miles from Pokrovsk, burned as a military warehouse erupted. Flames licked the sky while muffled explosions echoed, and a shaken Russian soldier muttered, "Hell has broken loose." The depot, once a cornerstone of Russian logistics, now smoldered, exposing the vulnerability of supply lines that sit perilously close to the front. These attacks are not isolated. Earlier in July, drones smashed a depot in Kharkiv, and border guard unmanned units eliminated another stockpile in the same region. Each success chips away at Russia's ability to sustain its offensive, forcing commanders to scatter their remaining munitions into smaller, harder-to-detect caches. Convoys become prime targets, and every intercepted shipment further starves the enemy of firepower. Cliffhanger: as Russian generals scramble to reorganize their dwindling ammunition, will Ukraine's relentless strikes finally break the stalemate, or will a hidden reserve of weapons emerge to reignite the offensive? In a breathtaking clash of wills and strategies, the battle for Pokrovsk has reached a critical climax. After a series of devastating Ukrainian counterstrikes, Russia's ambitious Pokrovsk offensive has come to an abrupt standstill. Ukraine's decisive actions, targeting vital infrastructure in occupied Donetsk, have ignited a firestorm that has left Russian forces grappling with chaos and uncertainty. For long, the Kremlin viewed the capture of Pokrovsk as pivotal, a tactical linchpin sought since the summer of 2024. Pokrovsk's geographic significance is undeniable. It is a nexus of transport and logistics, critical for moving supplies further into Ukraine, with major highways connecting it to essential cities like Dnipro. The control of Pokrovsk means not only dominance over these routes but also the ability to funnel reinforcements effectively. Ukrainian resilience shines through their defense of the city, bolstered by a continuous influx of resources enabling them to withstand Russia's relentless assaults. As Russian commanders employed various brutal tactics, including deploying disguised soldiers to create internal disruptions, Ukraine countered brilliantly. The tide began to turn when Oleksandr Syrsky, commander of Ukraine's armed forces, reported a remarkable shift. During August, Ukrainian forces managed to reclaim more territory than they lost, effectively nullifying the Russians' previous gains. However, September is a different narrative. Despite the barrage of Russian assaults, which occur weekly, Ukraine has revealed an uncanny ability to strike back. Precision strikes have consistently targeted ammunition depots, wreaking havoc on the Russian military's supply chain. The echoes of explosions heard across Donetsk resonated with the harsh reality of dwindling supplies facing the Russian soldiers. Each blast brings Ukraine one step closer to gaining the upper hand. But what lies beneath the surface of these explosions? Which secret deals and miscalculations might have led the Kremlin to underestimate its adversary? Sounds of distant screams mingled with the crack of artillery fire illustrate the grim atmosphere for Russian forces. Meanwhile, with their ammunition reserves dwindling, questions arise: can they muster the strength to regroup, or is the time finally up for their reign in Pokrovsk? Flashback to earlier skirmishes reveals a time when Russian forces felt invulnerable, backed by seemingly limitless resources and military might. The Kremlin's historical confidence has continuously overshadowed Ukraine, which has had to navigate a sea of strategic disadvantages. How the tables have turned. Reports from recent explosions in Donetsk city document a new era of warfare driven by intelligence, precision, and adaptability. Visualize drones prowling the dark skies, pinpointing their targets with deadly accuracy. There's palpable tension as Ukrainian forces dance a delicate waltz of strategy and timing that Russian commanders have failed to anticipate. Each engagement chips away at the Kremlin's resolve, but Russian officers are scrambling to find solutions while facing morale-sapping setbacks. How much longer can they withstand the unraveling grip on Pokrovsk before their carefully laid plans become nothing more than ash and regret? As the war drags on, these strategic maneuvers mark a pivot point. The outcome for both sides hangs in the balance, with the specter of an uncertain tomorrow looming ever closer. Will Ukraine's cunning and resilience continue to confound its opponents, or will Russia reclaim its lost ground with renewed fervor? Stay attuned as deeper layers unfold, offering insights into how Ukraine's relentless pursuit of strategic targets continues to turn the tide against its potent adversary. Each episode of this unfolding drama serves as a stark reminder of the dynamics at play in the battle for Pokrovsk, where every explosion signals a potential game-changer. Previously, we saw how Ukraine's precision strikes and tactical brilliance have forced Russian troops into vulnerable positions, leaving their supply lines stretched thin and morale on the brink. Ukrainian forces have been outsmarting and outmaneuvering the enemy, systematically dismantling their logistics and chipping away at their strength. The recent sabotage in the Zaporizhia region, which eliminated 18 high-ranking Russian officers, exemplifies the devastating impact of Ukraine's strategic operations on the battlefield. But what if this is just the beginning? What if these aren't isolated victories but part of a larger plan that will unravel the entire Russian offensive? The battlefield isn't just shifting, it's cracking under the weight of mistakes and miscalculations from Kremlin commanders who seem to believe sheer numbers would crush resistance. Instead, their hubs of power have been exposed and destroyed, turning an offensive into a desperate scramble for survival. It's been said that Russia's invasion was doomed from the outset. Why? Because no amount of tanks, missiles, or troops can substitute for careful strategy and adaptability. From the very start, Ukraine recognized its disadvantages in manpower, resources, and equipment, and answered with cunning and innovation. Rather than charging headlong into impossible clashes of brute force, Ukrainian forces have weaponized intelligence, drone warfare, and surgical strikes that cut through the enemy's strength like a scalpel. In this relentless campaign, each destroyed ammunition depot, each shattered bridge, each blown-up fuel storage has not just slowed the enemy, it has created chaos behind the lines. Russian soldiers find themselves running low on supplies, their commanders scrambling to patch together makeshift defenses and reroute precious resources. Every convoy spotted and intercepted chips away at their operational edge, disrupting plans and sending ripples of frustration through enemy ranks. What lies ahead is more than just a war of attrition, it's a battle for survival on a chessboard where every piece counts. Ukraine's clear-eyed tactics and flawless execution continue to erode Russia's advances, turning hopes of quick conquest into a grinding, unforgiving stalemate. And with each stunning defeat, Russia edges closer to a breaking point they might never recover from. The question now gripping the world is simple yet electrifying: can Russia regain its footing, or are they doomed to watch their power crumble from within? The answers will unfold soon, but one thing is sure, this conflict is rewriting the rules of modern warfare, and the underdog is teaching the world a lesson in resilience, precision, and unstoppable will.